What's going on, guys? It's your boy Nick coming at you today on the channel with my updated Mutant Ghoti deck profile. This is a deck that if you guys haven't seen yet, I showcased on my channel in the form of a live duel against my good friend's Umi control deck. And Myutant Ghoti did take the game in a best of 3. And, you know, this is at the request of one of my subscribers who asked me to do an updated profile on the list that I played, since that list did differ slightly from the original Myutant Ghoti deck profile that I uploaded now maybe about a month ago or so. Something I do want to point out about that deck list is it's just kind of funny because I felt like I was one of the early adapters of that deck, and to bring that deck to the channel, or bring it to the limelight, I should say, because I noticed that after I profiled that initial deck, or that initial version, a lot of other content creators ended up making videos about Myutant Ghoti specifically, which I found kind of cool, to be honest. I felt like I was ahead of the curve on that one. But this deck, it is optimized, and I talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did exactly and how I changed it. I am going to make a disclaimer though. This particular deck list, I would say it's the definitive version for now. But because we are already aware that Ghoti will be getting a second wave of support in Darkwing Blast, which at the time of recording is set to come out in the middle of October, which is roughly about maybe, I don't know, a little over 3 weeks from now. Obviously, those new Ghoti cards have not been revealed, and we really don't know what direction Konami is going to decide to take with the deck and what kind of support they're going to get. So obviously, depending on what cards are revealed and what's released, that may drastically change how this particular deck works. But until then, you know, for now, this is definitely going to be the most definitive version, I would say. And I'm going to talk a little bit about like some of my problems with Ghoti in general and how I think the overall deck flows. So for those of you who are new to the channel, my name's Nick. We do live duel videos, deck profiles, discussions of all different sorts of Yu-Gi-Oh! Related topics. I mainly feature a lot of like rogue decks and just off-the-wall stuff on my channel. I don't really focus too much on the competitive side of things, even though I do play competitively sometimes. Although I will be honest, I really haven't had much of a chance to go to like my locals and play against other players. Just timing right now has been kind of crap for me, and I've been really busy between work and other things. So haven't had too much time to devote to physical, like going to locals and playing in tournaments. But I have been doing a lot of testing online at night, you know, before I go to sleep. And just overall deck theorying and testing with some of my friends. This is like, I want to bring you guys more or less what I felt, you know, makes Myutant Ghoti extremely good this format, and even in other formats in general. So, again, I don't want to waste too much time in the intro. If you haven't subscribed already, I highly encourage you do. We just hit 500 subs, and we are working our way towards that 1,000 subscriber benchmark, and I can't do it without your guys' help. So we're going to start breezing through this stuff here real fast. Triple copies of MO5. I will say that I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the cards themselves. If you want a more in-depth profile on like what the Mutant cards and Ghoti cards do specifically, you can watch the original profile that I uploaded, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. This video is mainly just to discuss what changes I made to optimize the deck for a more competitive format, and some of the experiences I had while playing, testing it, and things that I feel that I want to let you guys know, since I feel like I've been playing this deck a lot, probably more so than other people have, and I probably know more about the deck than I think some others may be able to comment about. So, like I said, we're going to breeze through some of the stuff, and I just mainly want to focus on the changes. So we're on triple copies of MO5. Wonderful starter for a Mutant. It just being a Psychic and a Water and a level 2 on top of that is very, very strong. Then we're playing triple copies of Mutant ST46 as well, which is the secondary starter in the theme. Again, another Psychic. So both MO5 and ST46 are E-Tully targets. E-Tully is at 3, so that's just a whole nother layer of consistency that the deck has. Both of them net you a +1 on summon. MO5 being able to search monsters, ST46 being able to search spells and traps. And both of them have effects to summon out your mutant boss monsters, which we'll get into. Moving on, 2 copies of Mutant. This is the newest addition to the theme, and initially, in early testing, even before Ghoti came out, I was running Mutant at triple copies, but after doing a lot of testing and deck theorying, I think 2 copies of Mutant is absolutely the correct ratio. Even though Mutant is very strong, and it does like fix one of the glaring problems with the deck, which was being very normal summon reliant, Mutant is a wonderful extender. The only downside about it really is that you can only use its effect once, maybe even twice if you're lucky per duel, because of the life point payment that comes with its effect. Especially like game 3, once you start getting into time, it's not something you're really going to want to be using much of, because obviously the new time rules aren't that great, and if you're paying a lot of points to put a boss monster on the field, there's no guarantee that you're going to get your opponent below the life threshold that you already paid. So just 2 copies of Mutant I feel is the perfect number. But now we're moving into our Mutant big boys, or bosses, and this ratio hasn't changed even since my original Mutant deck list. We're on 2 copies of Beast, 1 Mist, 1 Arsenal for a total of 4 different targets. I've seen some people just run 1 of each. I've also seen people play 2 Beast and 1 Arsenal and cut the Mist. I honestly think that's very incorrect. Yes, I'm well aware that these cards are garnets in your hand and you really don't want to draw them. However, you can mitigate like that with the Mutant Field Spell, being able to like shuffle them back and draw a card, which is nice. But I honestly think that playing 4 like bosses in the deck of mutant names is perfect, because like realistically on your first turn you're gonna burn through at least 2 of them. Like usually you're gonna end on a Beast and an Arsenal, and then if you really opened like the nuts, you'll end on Beast, Mist, and Arsenal all together, which will basically leave you with only 1 to 2 names in deck. And if the duel becomes a grind, you're gonna appreciate having that additional boss monster, that additional body to summon off of your mutant starters, because the Mutant starters are very weak in terms of stats, and they're not designed to like, break boards or push through anything. The Mutant bosses are. So I've always seen people like play less, and I don't think that's correct. I think 4 is the absolute best number to play, especially Beast being the most important, I would say, since he's the easiest one to summon because you banish a monster to summon Beast, and he's also a spell negate, which I feel is extremely relevant. Now, you could argue that Mist is the most situational out of the 3, and I would agree with you. However, I can count the number of times that Mist has helped me out of a jam. Like his effect, being able to like respond to traps and like giving you a pot of greed effectively, is invaluable. Like just being able to capitalize off your opponent's plays. Yes, he doesn't stop their trap cards, but you still go +2 on that whatever interaction that they did. And I think that just gives this deck a really good mid to late game grind over your opponent. Plus, not to mention, the only way to recycle these cards realistically is through Mutant Cry. And if your Mutant Cry gets like Ghost Belled, for example, you're not able to shuffle these back in the deck, which means that you're not going to be able to summon them. So like if you're playing like only 2 names, like Beast or an Arsenal by themselves, once you burn through the Beast and Arsenal, if you're unable to cycle them back into deck, you're not going to be able to resummon anything off of your Mutant starters, which puts you in a really bad position. So that's why I feel like playing 2 Beasts, 1 Mist, 1 Arsenal is the absolute best number in general, and I would not change that ratio whatsoever. I've been playing Mutant for a long time, and I've been very happy with that. Now moving into the Ghoti package, we're on triple copies of Paces, Light of Ghoti, and then we're also on 2 copies of Schiff, Fairy of the Ghoti. Now this is where you're going to start noticing some of the main deck changes with the deck list to optimize it a little better so it runs a little more smoothly. We were previously playing in the initial deck list, we were running Enoch as well as Ghoti Chain. For this particular list, I decided to cut Enoch and Chain, and I increased Schiff from 1 copy to 2. Now the reason why we did that, and I'm going to be totally honest here, I think Paces and Schiff are fantastic cards. I just don't think that Ghoti they don't have enough cards yet. Like they've only had 1 wave of support, and these are literally between Paces, Schiff, and Enoch. These are the only main deck monsters. They have 1 trap, a field spell, and then 2 synchros. And I'm like 90% sure that that's literally the entire archetype. If I'm missing something, feel free to roast me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's it. The field spell I never even bothered playing, not even in the original build either, because I just don't feel like there's enough main deck Ghotis to make this card viable. Yes, I'm aware that it's a Rhoda-like card, being that it searches you a Ghoti from deck to hand, but you need to banish a fish in order for you to do that. And my thing is that there's not enough fish monsters that you're playing to make this card relevant. So like we didn't play it in the initial build and we're not playing it now, simply because I just feel there's not enough main deck like Ghotis like to get value off of this. Like if you open this and don't open a fish to banish, this effectively just becomes a dead draw because it's a do nothing card. You can activate it, but it's not going to do anything. It doesn't help Mutant in any way, shape, or form, and it sure as hell doesn't help Ghoti unless you also have a fish in hand to banish to search. But then even then, it's like, what are you going to search for? Like Enoch, like he's not a play starter either, and this gets into my other point as to why we're not running Enoch in this particular variant. I feel that Enoch is a very bad card. And again, this is all opinionated right now. Again, you have to understand that Ghoti is only on their first wave of support, so I don't want to be too harsh on the theme, but they need more main deck cards. They need another way to be able to summon this that isn't just opening paces alongside of it. Because the gripe that I had with Enoch is the fact that if you opened with Enoch, it was the worst draw ever because it literally didn't do anything. Like, it was just a brick. You couldn't do anything with it. The only time that Enoch had value was when you opened Enoch alongside paces. But then now you're relying on opening 2 cards in your 5-card opening hand, and it's just not going to work out in your favor whatsoever. And then even then, you normal summon paces, use its effect to banish itself to then special Enoch from hand, and then Enoch brings back the paces, and then you can make the Bicorn Ghoti, which is the level 8 synchro, and then, or I'm sorry, even before you make the Bicorn Ghoti, excuse me, I'm jumping ahead, use Enoch to banish paces to search chain, and then set the chain, and then on the standby phase, Paces comes back. You make the Bicorn Ghoti on their turn, because at that point the Paces is no longer negated. And then when you activate the Bicorn Ghoti's effect, you target itself and any other cards, chain Ghoti chain to the Bicorn Ghoti's chain link 1, and then you banish the Bicorn as cost, banish one of their cards, chain resolves to special shift from deck, for example, and then use Bicorn Ghoti's graveyard effect, or banished effect technically, to return itself to field, and then you can use shift and the Bicorn to make the Deep Beyond. That's something that I overlooked because I did a combo tutorial video on this deck as well, and I kind of fumbled that whole combo line, and somebody in the comments actually corrected me and told me how it should go down. But even that line, just is very suboptimal. In my opinion, you didn't get much value off of it. I just felt like Enoch was a hard garnet, and then the fact that when it's normal or special, it doesn't have a way to special itself for starters, which is the biggest gripe. But even if you did special it, off a card like Chain, for example, yeah, you can revive a banished Ghoti, but then that monster's effects are negated. So even if you revive Shift or Paces during the opponent's turn, they can't quick sync. So it's what am I summoning this card for? It's literally only good during your turn. And honestly, if you're going first, it's not even all that great. It's only good going second, but then the problem is that going second into an established board, the play that this card gets you isn't strong enough to even push through any relevant, type of disruption. So I just decided to cut it. Again, my opinion might change once we get the new wave of support, but I just felt like Enoch was not that good. And I'm sure some other people who play Ghoti and have tested it will kind of share my opinion. And then that brings us to Chain, another card that we are not running in this particular version. Chain... It's a cool card. It's basically an E-Telly from anywhere. You just can special a Ghoti from basically hand, deck, or graveyard. Doesn't matter. As long as it has a different name than the Ghoti you banished to activate this. Also, something I should say is that I'm referring to Ghotis a lot, but some of these cards let you banish fish monsters as cost. But since we're not playing other fish in this deck, I'm just going to refer to everything as a Ghoti for the time being. Yes, I'm aware that Chain can banish any fish to resolve the effect, but for the cases of this deck specifically, we're only playing Ghoti cards, so we don't have any other fish to banish. I just think Chain can be a lot better depending on the next wave of support they get. In this particular deck, I felt that Chain wasn't that great, because realistically, if you open Chain and didn't have a Ghoti already in rotation, Chain was another do-nothing card, because it needs to banish a fish first in order for it to special summon any Ghoti from hand, deck, or grave. So, if you open Chain, didn't open any names, it was just another dead garnet. So, I just dislike the fact that, you already had 2 cards in the deck and in the theme that didn't do anything without very specific setup early on. And if you didn't have that setup early on, it was very difficult to get these cards to resolve past, turn 3 or 4. Because at that point, your opponent's usually established quite well if the duel's going their way. And by the time you get these cards in rotation, it's usually just too little too late. So, we're not running those cards anymore. And then also, off subject, we're no longer running Moray of Avarice either. I know this is not a Ghoti-themed card, but it came out in the same set, and it is very, I would say it's themed around them, being that you have to banish fish and you get a draw 2. It's cute. One of the biggest gripes I had at this card was the fact that you needed to banish a fish, sea serpent, or aqua that you controlled specifically. That is such a horrible nerf on this card. Honestly, I wish you could just banish a Fish, Sea Serpent, or Aqua from your hand or that you controlled, it would have made this card way more versatile. Like, yes, I'm aware that it gives you a draw 2, and that's great and dandy, but my thing is I do not want to commit my normal summon just to activate a Moray of Avarice to get ashed. Like, and then burn the normal, and I don't even get my +2. Like, that, I'm not with that whatsoever. So I cut this card. Like I said, if it lets you banish the Fish, Sea Serpent, or Aqua from hand, I feel like it would have been way more viable, but because it doesn't, I just felt like this card was very awkward. And there was times when I opened it, and again, didn't have a name in order for me to banish in the first place. And then the times that I did, like sometimes the draws that I would get were just so crappy. And like I said, I don't know, just consistency-wise, I wasn't too happy with it, so I decided to cut it as well. So that's a little bit of a deep dive on like what I changed. So now we're going to finish up the rest of the deck. And like I said, I'm going to try and breeze through this. Moving on to hand traps, we have a brand new addition to the deck in the form of Frame Gear Gamma, and of course the one driver. I think Gamma in this deck is absolutely nuts. Gamma in general is probably like the second or third best hand trap you could be playing this format. Not only because it negates a monster effect, but it also destroys the monster, which means you stop whatever they were trying to do, and you get rid of that resource to keep your opponent from using it to extend it to something else, which I think is absolutely invaluable. So, and not to mention it's a tuner and a psychic and a level 2. So since we already main deck triple E-Telly, if, you know, we use Gamma early on and, you know, we already burned through the driver, at least the other Gammas in deck can become extenders through E-Telly, and they can still help us make synchros, make links, make anything of that nature. So I think Frame Gear Gamma is very, very strong. And then, of course, we main deck probably the single-handedly best hand trap this format, Triple Dimension Shifter, and this deck can main deck it with absolutely no problems. Myutant and Ghoti don't give a single shit if their cards are banished. So D-Shifter just fits in quite nicely. If anything, we want our cards banished anyway, so sometimes Shifter ends up like plussing us because like, we're getting stuff banished that we otherwise wouldn't have had banished, and it's triggering more effects down the road. But Shifter just completely hoses like all the meta right now. It's a very strong card, and I would not underestimate it at all. Not to mention, too, it just got reprinted in the Megatins, and I think it's getting a common printing in the Crystal Beast structure. So if you don't have Shifters already, it's definitely going to be easier to pick them up. And I'm definitely not afraid of it being hit on the ban list. At least right now, it's just too early. Like I said, Konami wants to capitalize on their reprints so people can buy their products. At the end of the day, Konami is a business company, and they want to make money. So it makes no sense for them to hit Shifter right after they printed it, and not only the Megatins, but on a structure deck that they know people are going to buy. So I think Shifter is safe, at least for this list. But moving on to the spells, 2 copies of Mutant Evolution Lab. Very happy with this ratio. It functions as a nice extender, and you can also mulligan your hand if you do happen to open one of the high-level mutants. So I like that. At 2, 1 copy of Mutant Fusion. Very, very strong, especially when your opponent activates a card or effect during your turn. This effectively turns into a Miracle Fusion and a Shadal Fusion all in one card. So very nuts. And then, of course, we are on triple E-Telly. Just, again, further consistency, being able to summon not only cards at Gamma, but also every single one of your mutant starters, which is a huge plus. Just adding more consistency to the deck. It's just making it overall a lot better to play. 1 called by, of course, just to stop pesky hand traps and annoying threats. And then moving on to the traps, Mutant Cry is the absolute bread and butter of this theme. Think of this card like the mutant version of Tri-Brigade Revolt. This card lets you fusion summon a mutant fusion by shuffling materials listed on that fusion from among the cards on your field, in your graveyard, or your banish zone. So not only do you recycle a bunch of your materials back into your deck, but you also get a free fusion monster for your troubles that also ends up popping a card on their field. So like you go so plus on this exchange. Mutant Cry is very, very strong. Wouldn't recommend playing any less than 3 copies. Then of course we're on 2 expansion, which is basically an in-archetype version of E-Telly just in trap card form. Also can offer some protection against your higher level mutants by banishing itself to protect them from card destruction. 1 copy Mutant Clash, which is like an in-archetype impermanence for the deck, and also can net you some draws in the process if a level 8 or higher mutant monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle. And then we are on triple copies of Impermanence. So if you notice, we are main decking 3 different hand traps in this deck in the form of Gamma, Shifter, and Imperm. And honestly, I think all the hand traps you're running basically fit the slots of the first best, or the best, second best, and third best hand traps we could be playing. Like I said, Shifter I think is number 1, followed by Gamma, and I would say Imperm is probably like the 3rd best hand trap you could be running in this format. just being able to activate it from hand when you go second, and your opponent goes first, it not being once per turn, also being able to set it and then locking them out of certain spell trap zones as well is very, very useful. And then for the last 2 cards in the main deck, we're on a 42 card list, so we've actually slimmed down from the original version. 2 copies of Draco Utopian Aura. This card in this particular deck is absolutely nuts. If you're able to banish a monster from your hand, it's usually going to be a mutant, which you can get back anyway, or a Ghoti that's going to summon itself in the following standby. So there's literally no cost to this card. It's just free real estate all the way around, extremely strong. So that's going to round out the main deck, guys. And then we'll jump into the extra deck because there were some changes made there as well. We're still on the 2 Synthesis, 1 Ultimus as far as our Mutant Fusion package goes. We are always going to be playing Synthesis in this deck at 2. It's for the simple fact that you can make Synthesis using another copy of Synthesis. It does come up, believe it or not. And Synthesis overall is just a really strong mutant card. It pops any card on the field upon its fusion summon. As a quick effect, it can become immune to either monsters, spells, or traps activated by your opponent for the remainder of the turn. You chain it in response, and it becomes immune to something that they activated of that type for the rest of the turn, which makes it difficult to deal with. And it also floats upon destruction. Overall, I couldn't ask for a better fusion monster. The only thing I would say is maybe if it had more attack, but honestly, that can be mitigated by the field spell, which also can buff the stats of your mutants as well. And then Ultimus, just being basically a better copy of Invoke Mechaba, very strong. If you summon this card, you're not losing that duel. Honestly, if you can make Ultimus in Mutant, you literally won. Just your opponent should scoop. They're not going to be able to out this. Moving on, though, for the Synchro package, we're on 1 copy of Ascan, the Bicorn Ghoti, and then 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite. These are the only 2 level 8 synchros we're playing. And you're probably noticing a big difference from the original deck list is we slimmed down in our level 8 synchros. Reason being is that we are no longer running Enoch. Enoch was pretty much the only way we had to make a level 8 synchro. And now we're not running it in this list, so you're probably wondering, how are we making a level 8 synchro? Well, we're actually making our level 8 synchros through our Gamma package. If the opponent uses a hand trap in the form of a monster during our turn, when we have no monsters on field, we can Gamma it, and then we capitalize. If we're going first, we'll end up making Dragite, just because mutants and Ghotis are water, so Dragite's usually live. And going first, you just get a free spell trap negate for your troubles. If we're going second and we need to break a board, then we'll probably end up going into Ascan. Because let's say we activate something, they chain their Omni negate, we chain Gamma, we negate their negate, destroy their negate, special summon the Gamma of the driver, our effect still resolves whatever they tried to stop, then we make an Ascan for our troubles, and then clear another card off their field for basically free, which is just disgusting. So just those 2 synchros specifically for level 8s. Of course, we're still on 2 copies of Deep Beyond. Very strong card. If we can make this during the opponent's turn, it's a complete blowout, and it just keeps coming back over and over and over again, ultimately outgrinding your opponent out of the resources. Then for our generic level 10, we're on 1 copy of Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Cheng-Ying. Cheng-Ying has a lot of utility with this deck, being that it likes to banish stuff so much for cost. You can easily trigger Cheng-Ying's secondary effect to banish a card the opponent controls and in their grave. And also because we banish so many things, the stat buff and the stat reduction Cheng-Ying offers is really helpful too. We play 1 Psychic End Punisher as our level 11 synchro of choice. We can make it quite easily in this deck. Off of Mutant Synthesis, which is the fusion, and any Ghoti. 9 and 2 make 11, and then End Punisher is obviously just a very quick way to end any game. And then we actually added a new Xyz to this deck list. We're playing 1 Onibamaru, the Soul Sweeper, alongside the Dingirsu that we already played. We can make Ding off of our level 8 mutant bosses, which is really nice. But Onibamaru is a new addition. I felt that because we play so many level 2s in the form of the Ghotis and Mutant MO5 being a 2, playing this rank 2 Xyz was helpful because we can make this and also clear any threat, target and banish a monster until the end of their next turn, which is nice just to remove something annoying. And then for the links, we're on 1 Anima because we can make this off of Mutant. You can catch your opponent sleeping, bro. A lot of people forget this card exists. I can't tell you how many times players have summoned a monster in the opposite in the extra monster zone, and then I just make an Anima off Mutant and just suck it up, or bait the negate, which is very hilarious as well. Then we're on 1 copy of Psyframe Lord Lambda in the extra deck because we are playing the Gamma package. So now, if we want to have access to Gamma, we can search it through Lambda. And also, if we have a Gamma in hand already, we can make Lambda and then Gamma's live, even if we still control monsters, so that's obviously very helpful. And then one Eerie of the Water Charmer, just a generic water link 2 we can make, given that almost everything we play is water, is nice. And then for the last card is the one Sprite Elf, which honestly has been gaining a lot of traction, and I've been seeing more and more Sprite Elves in different deck lists. Sprite Elf is a very, very strong card. If your deck plays any type of level 2s, which this deck does play a lot of, given that the Ghotis and MO5 are level 2, then Sprite Elf is something you should probably consider, especially since the card is spiking in price. But that's going to be it for the updated deck list, guys. Hopefully, after watching this, you have a little bit of a better idea on how the deck should be played. Again, I would say that this is the definitive version for the time being, at least until we get the second wave of Ghoti support. But honestly, like I said, I've been testing the deck out. Haven't had a chance to go to locals, but testing amongst my friends and just testing on Ito, it's been very, very consistent and a hell of a lot of fun. Honestly, as of right now, I think this is the best way or the most definitive way to play Ghoti in any deck. I think Ghoti Pure doesn't exist because there just isn't enough in-archetype Ghoti cards to make its own theme. Like, if you play Ghoti, you're splashing it into something. And I've seen, like, fish builds where they run, like, the Coelacanth, that super ancient level 7 old-ass fish monster. And yes, you can make some really cool synchros through that line. The problem is that if the Coelacanth gets stopped, you're basically dead in your tracks. It's very susceptible to hand traps. And I'm not saying that this build isn't, but keep in mind that because the mutants banish for cost, you can always guarantee that your Ghotis are going to be banished, even if the mutant effects get stopped. So at least you still have that recursion where you can always guarantee the Ghoti will be banished, unless they lock you like under Imperial Iron Wall or some stupid shit. You know, you can at least know that your Ghotis will be banished, which is what they always want to be during the course of the duel. And like I said, like, you just use the Ghotis as banish fodder for your mutants, and usually that would be like pretty neggy. But since the Ghotis come back through their own effects, like, the cost you pay for the mutants aren't really cost, because yeah, you lose a card, but then you get that card back literally on the next standby, and then that card can also enable synchro plays, something that mutants didn't even have access to previously. So, like, there's a lot of really good synergy with this deck, and I think, like I said, taking this deep dive into space, however you want to call it, like I said, I've had a lot of time to sit down and mull this deck over in deck theory, and I think as of right now, this is the most definitive way to play any variant of Ghoti. Mutants are just the perfect engine that Ghoti can slide into and work almost seamlessly. So with that being said, guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and stay tuned for more really cool upcoming Yu-Gi-Oh content, because I have some really cool spice coming your way, hopefully really soon on the channel, so stay tuned.